Hello everyone. Today we're going to be looking at my latest ILG acquisition. This is also my new smallest member of my ILG family that I have. This is an 8-inch ILG Industries panel mount fan. So it's a Model 83. And this one I believe is new old stock. There's no evidence that I can find on the fan that it was ever actually mounted and used. Usually you'll always see some kind of witness mark, chips in the paint around the mounting holes. Now admittedly, I have hung this up on a couple of on a wire hanger a couple times. So the two top mounting holes will show a couple little scratches and chips. If you look up close, you may not even be able to see them from this view. But when I did unpackage the fan for the first time, I checked and fully there was no paint missing or scratched anywhere around any of the mounting holes. So I'm fairly certain that this thing just sat around for a long time. It's in extremely excellent condition. Um, there's just a couple little areas of surface rust on the wire guard, and I think that might have just been due to paint flaws from the factory. Maybe there was a spot where it didn't quite cover or stick well, and over time, the moisture got to it and caused a little bit of surface rusting. But other than that, it's pretty much spotless. It is a shaded pole motor, and it's a high slip 4-pole, so it's a 1550 RPM, and it draws about, I want to say it's about 0.6 amps. And the motor, when I got the fan, it was kind of like sluggish. It didn't want to reach full speed, and I did have to completely dismantle the whole motor, clean the bearings really thoroughly, and I put some new oil in there, and ever since then, now it runs much better. It's still not perfect. There's a little bit of a mild drumming sound every now and then that happens, and I think it just has to do with the positioning of the rotor within, the gaps between the bearings. uh, you know, it's a sleeve bearing motor, so you've got the fiber washers that give you that, they take up the space so that you have very limited end play. And I think there's just either they need to be switched around their positioning a little bit, or I may need to add some, or I'm trying to see if maybe I can use something a little bit resilient so that it's has a little bit of a spongy cushioning to it. So I may even try using an O-ring in between some of the fiber washers just to cushion it so that it doesn't have that drumming sound. But either way, it's a really cool little fan, and it moves a lot of air for its size. Pretty typical of any ILG type Q. But without further rambling here, I'm going to start it up so you can see how this thing runs. So here we go. I have it on a switch that I can control as either a full speed or I can do a variable speed. So first, we're going to start it off at full speed, wide open. So you may be able to hear a little bit of that drumming sound I'm talking about. It's not crazy loud, but you can hear it. It's there. So I'm going to let this coast down. And now I'm going to start it off on the very lowest speed that I can get it to turn on with the variable speed control. I believe it was drawing about 16 watts at this setting. And I'll turn the dial up a little bit here. And we'll let it coast back down to a stop. So real quick, I wanted to show what I've decided to do is, well, first of all, there's the inside of the motor. You can see what that looks like. And here's the rotor. And what I've done is this originally had these metal spacers, and it had one on the front and one on the back. And that was just to help shim the spacing of the rotor. But what I've decided to do is take those out, and I've actually stuck two O-rings. I put an O-ring on the front and an O-ring in the back, and it's sandwiched in between fiber washers. And I've actually already had this put together once and tried it, and it actually worked really well to silence the motor and make it run much smoother. So I'm going to put this back together and we'll give this thing a test run. So here I'm going to go for a start with no blade on it. Seems to be running nice and smooth. There's the specs of the motor. So now we'll see what happens when I put the blade on. Here we go with the blade. That sounds so much better. No more drumming. I am much more happy with that. All right, so I don't know if anybody's ever had that idea before, but if you ever want to try to quiet one of these motors that the shaft seems to kind of drum against the end bell. Now, when the blade is off of it, it does magnetically center itself between the space. So if I have the blade off and I have the motor running, you can actually push a little bit on the shaft or pull it out, and it seems to kind of float in between. It doesn't really naturally want to push against either side, and that's what you want. You want it to kind of center itself. But when there's the force of the blade, there's thrust there because the blade is pushing air out. So that same force is being pushed back as thrust against that rear fiber washer and that whole shim pack. So now that I have an O-ring in there, it absorbs any bit of vibration or anything that might occur back there, and really makes this thing run nice and smooth. So there we go. Okay, I'm going to go for one more startup with the ILG Model 83 here, and just to see how it sounds now that I have the O-rings put in place of those steel spacers on the motor shaft. So here we go. This is at full speed. Wow, that made a huge improvement. I don't hear any drumming. It just sounds smooth and quiet. I'm sure it probably sounds louder on the camera because the microphone always wants to pick up the wind noise. So it's not quite the same as hearing it with your own ears, but hopefully this will get the point across. So there we go. Alright, so I hope you all enjoyed watching that. If you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe to my channel, and be sure to have a fantastic day.